Okay. So for this restorative kind of rib and chest selection, we have our couple blankets at the back. You've got your bolster horizontal, you've got a block. And I would just kind of sit on that little itty bitty block in front of your bolster. If you've got a wall space, right next to your practice space at the foot, that's kind of how I typically set just because of the room. So if you happen to have that, just be sure you're not too close to it so you don't kick into the wall. Although touching it feels nice for this pose. But you also have your other block to the side. You've got your belt. So I want you to have it buckled up so it's in somewhat of a kind of a large loop. You can always make the loop smaller when we get to that shape. So just keep that on the side. And then you'll add your sandbag or a bag of rice, whatever you might have that's 5 to 10 pounds of weight. And if you have a ball, little squishy ball, doesn't have to be this ball, but some squishy ball, then you'll have that next to your mat as well. All right, so let's dive in. So we'll start with diving back. We'll lower back so that the kind of the quality of circulation in the midsection is that you can feel when you lower your head down to your blanket. You kind of have to fuss around to assert the lift of the ribs because they kind of lift, and the spine centers, kind of dual parts of the back, feel a little taut in this position. So when you reach your feet down, it could be the bottoms of the feet touch the ground, knees bent. It could be legs extend. So I like to say let your feet reach down, and that just makes it individualized. And so as the sand is on the eyelids, you let the spine gradually settle, right? So the side corners of the spine are again kind of taut. So if I stretch the arms out, I'm going to kind of take some consideration of where my blankets are under my head towards my shoulders. And just considering how this spread of muscles in the front help balance my spines, gives a message to my spine to create some strength. That's the idea of chest opening, is that it's strengthening for the spine. Back bends are strengthening for the spine. So as we let the feet have some separation, whether the knees are bending or the legs are extending, see if you can let your eyes center back and then feel how the breath is shifting inside. If there's a possibility that you equate the movement of the breath along the central axis, like the idea of belly lifts on inhale, but see if you can work with the breath expansive spaciousness. And then let the feet relax. So if the knees are bent, that might be a little different. You might have the knees bent and the knees touching, so it's a little more passive on the feet. If the legs are extending, well, that's kind of an easy message. Just let them go. And with the length of the in-breath for 4 to 5 counts, and relax on the out-breath for 5 to 6 counts. Now feel the blend of the shoulders, the motion of the shoulders back. So it becomes more chest experience in your upper bones of the body versus when you walk around, it's a lot of shoulder rolling forward or kind of the tension in the top of our arms. So just let the position help you open your chest and feel that sensation of circulation spreading in the respiratory system. Let it be cleansing and also relaxing. Stay just another minute and a half right here. Now there's work to do when the thighs have a little pressure on the top. There's sometimes the spine descends without a whole lot of connection to the stomach, kind of the bones that hold that land. And so as you slide the sand away, I would come right back to the knees bending, pointing the knees up, sand away. And then as the arms maybe relax back to where they just were, start to tinker a bit with the feel of the arch of the back and a movement of the legs. So we're going to alternate knees up and towards the chest. So get a feel if you need to just meaning me, you need to bring your knee up and you kind of pull it in. Now feel if you start that action by maybe kicking your foot and moving the knee in. But just kind of play with it. Do you tend to kick the foot and then move the thigh towards you? Or do you like to keep control and go right into the pressure in the back and the knee moving in? So I want you to kind of play with that. This might mean you slide the foot that's lifting up the knee, stretch it down, and then curl it in. And then you might move the legs. So let's take the last two of these with an effort of the posterior core muscles trying to widen. So I don't want you to feel that you move your knees in at each time and try to grip even further. And maybe a cat trying to get in here for extra support. Okay, so last knee drawing in. Certainly glad to be inside right now. It's awfully loud outside. Okay, so next time you move the foot down, place the feet as wide of a stance as you can tolerate. Now this could be in the edge of your sticky mat, without trying to push the knees inwards and not pushing the knees any farther outwards. Push down into the soles of the feet so you can experience the underbelly of the thighs toning. So you can feel a little bit of tone in the thigh muscles. When you do bridge pose, you have to lift your hips up and the back line of energy in the legs grips up. So now you'll step your feet back to about hips distance and try to keep that tone the whole time, toning time. And now you'll push down into your feet and curl the back of the pelvis so you do a little pelvic tilt. And then you'll reach down with your hand to slide that block away. And I would just put it overhead. If you're going to use the block for reaching poses, you might not use that for side sage, but now feel how the pelvis, it kind of droops back down. It doesn't necessarily stay toned. So you want to work on pelvic floor by feeling your feet hips distance, pushing down firm into your feet, and just use that bolster to hold your back muscles up. And see if you can lift your hips just a little bit further. You don't have to take your blankets down a notch, but so the thighs are very toned. And there's usually a little bit of a drop at the very front of the hip heads. It doesn't quite get high enough, right, to get full 100%, but you do feel the glute muscles activate, the buttocks, the hips, and then relax the tone and roll to your left and take side sage. So now this whole zone in the lower bones can kind of move into this dexterity of sensation. So if you have a ball, and if you like to use it on the inside of that right leg, and then you'll take a sandbag to the side. Now, if you don't have a sandbag, you can work with all these shapes minus sand, it's fine. You can just ignore the sandbag direction. But if you have bag of weight, place that on the side, and then feel where the reach is with the right hand overhead. And if the hand does not want to go that direction, if it pulls your shoulder, you can always have the arm besides you. You can have the arm opening with movement patterns. So you're free to roam. And I think the place that I get a little bit curious about is where my my head turns, or if it's safer to have the side of my head on the blanket. So where does the focus react with your breath? It's in the rib cage. Okay, and I want us to get some efforting with the reach here. So the reason being, we're going to add a twist to this one today. And so we'll do both sage poses. So you want to get a feel that the left arm is really passive, right, between the bolster and blankets. It's not really doing very much except for threading that left side of the back to relax it. That almost makes it sound as if relaxation isn't doing anything, but I suppose I'll take that back. But you have a purpose of the left arm to create grounding. And then as that right arm is in an overhead span, whether it's resting or it's reaching, relax your eyes and sense the movement of the breath in the ribs. You know, it's just the side that has this kind of fertile ground for rotation now. It's mostly the sides, right? And so as you move the sand away, and I would just keep it off of your back for the sleeping sage, even if you've experienced that in class, the sand on the back, so that you can really work on your source of motion and into the pose. So as you come up, you just kind of keep, and let's do the classic version of this. So we'll take a blanket away and we'll turn the bolster, and I would just keep your lower blanket flat, like it's a quarter fold. Doesn't need to, you don't need to change it up, but you'll take the top across the top of the short end of the bolster, and let's see, I think this block in the back, if you have one, you'll move it to the front for where we're going. But first things first, you have your bones in a structure like you did for side sage. You have the left knee bent, it's kind of hooked foot to the right thigh. There's less use of a ball for this one, although some people still like to have the ball on the inside of the right leg. But the reason being, you're turning your waist, and the abdomen is lower than the bolster. So my belly is below the bolster height. I'm not trying to pull my belly up across the bolster. So when you lean your body weight into that bolster, and then you pivot at your neck to the right and relax your arms besides the props. Depends on what props you're discussing, I suppose, but feel the movement across the upper back. If the blanket seems too low, then you just roll it up a little bit higher. The other option, if the neck part is a little iffy for you, is you can take the blanket. So those of you comfortable with the head turn, just stay with that. But if you need a variation, this can be nice. This is also a recommended variation if you have a headache, right? You actually place the blanket with height, and so that the frontal lobes are pressed into it. So then you have a different head pressure. In some ways, that's what diverts the headache. So relax into your preferred version with your head down or spine rotating gently. Okay, so, visualizing that the spine still has a lot of length. There's natural curves. There's 3 curves through it now. And just feel where the flow across the back broadens. Your arms could be kind of hunkered underneath the blanket next to the bolster, stretching back. Or you could flow the arms a little farther distant. Anything that's not going to kind of tighten up further into your shoulder pieces, I would let the arms rest in. And simply balance the in and the out breath. Now, if you feel the heartbeat, there's any possibility to achieve slowing that down with the breath. It might not. Just notice what that pace is before we switch, because we will reflect on it with the second side. Slide the hands so they're under the shoulders. Elbows are in more of kind of that pulling in. I always think of grasshopper when I have my elbows as close to my sides. So as we spread the fingers and then lift, then we're going to take our body to turn towards the front. And I want you to have your belt and your blocks. So let's get our blocks besides our mat. And so the blocks are, I think, maybe the second setting is the kindest way to be, because I like to kind of contour the block in towards the thigh. Some like to go real low. So if you already know your routine with Baddha, you have your blocks low, then go for that. But start with the feeling of your feet together, your knees out, and then get your belt that's in a loop. The buckle is going to be something that you can, pull and tighten the tail of the belt from. So you want that in front of you or the side of you, not behind you. And then scoop up your feet with the belt across the top of the foot. And then I want you to pull the belt over towards the buckle part, actually, that's what I mean, to the hip. So you can easily unbuckle if you need to, if there's an emergency. Who knows, huh? But feel when the knees are out that the block, whether it's flat or it's contoured, I like where it kind of positions. So it's in this zone on the very lateral part of my leg. And it kind of positions to puff up my thigh, kind of makes my thigh kind of span out. And that's easier on my hips. So, use this pose to help your hips. So I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, but it's almost as if you're ready to take your one hand underneath, one hand on top, and you're kind of rotating it, like you're turning that open. Yep. Treat yourself like it's like you're trying to get your flesh to rotate and externally rotate. And then make sure your belt's not too high up. It's always best if we have the belt a little lower, like so the eyebrows of the buttocks is a good aim. If it feels very snug, let it be snug. And then when you glide back, then you might loosen it. But I imagine the proximity of your feet might change from the groins, and you'll keep sorting out how you settle. Sometimes just accepting the balance of the hips. Always further to go. And then let's bring the arms so that we cross the right arm at the chest. So it's more collarbone crossing of the right arm, left hand to right elbow, and press. See what it feels like if the left hand is on that right elbow and it takes the arm across, the deltoid stretch. Or feel it's like maybe for some of us where we just let the arm bend. And we kind of feel parts of the right arm stretching. That's above the elbow. That should feed into the back. But simply play with it. And this isn't a still point position. It's more a little bit of movement. Okay, now slow down the movement. And then see if you can hold onto your elbows and bring the arms back overhead or just in front of the forehead peak. And bring your arms both straight back independent, not holding each other. And just sense, what does it feel like in the right side compared to the left after you stretch that arm just a tiny bit. You might feel like a thicker, stronger pulse in that arm. And then change the arm crossing. So left arm across the upper body, doesn't need to be collarbones for everybody. You know, we all have a little different history with our joints. So you might find this is, you have your own little rehabilitation course that you go into in the home practice. You kind of get a nice guide, a guidebook, and you do some of the things and orient in other ways. Relax the left hand. If it's kind of gripping, you feel your fingers pushing out of the hand, let the fingers relax. Breathing. And really sensing where the back stretches. If it does at all, maybe it's all arm for you. Let go of the elbow, bring the arms down by the sides, feel the shoulders centered back, and the experience is simplicity. It's not trying an effort anymore, it's using the props to hold you. So feeling, if your head is not quite restful, you might find it necessary to let your head nod a little side to side. Good. Or keep it centered. And sometimes the side to side movement is centered for someone. Now the feet are relaxed. This is interesting. If you kind of notice how do your feet connect with even the belt, the soles can feel comfortable touching. I mean, they probably rarely touch together. They're next to each other all day, but they don't get to merge. So as you unbuckle, prepare in some way your nervous system that something might shift. But another way of going with it is unbuckle and just kind of see without adding a grip to your thigh, like instinctually. Just see what happens when you unbuckle. If it's okay if it stays pretty much the same releasing of the hip. And then I would slide your belt, just even with your back on the bolster, just reach down to the belt and pull it so it's not around the legs. And then as you lift up the left knee and keep the foot on the ground, we'll take that right leg and try to keep your spine in this willingness to relax on the bolster. So this means not so much resistance with your stomach and your ribs when you move your right leg out. So you just try it. You see if you can lift your right leg, cross that foot to that left knee, that ankle to the left knee. If you kind of gripped quite a bit in your nervous system to engage that motion, just notice, it's like, it's always a good education to just feel what responses you kind of are on guard with a lot, even in yoga. So now I get the ball, or you can also use the sandbag is okay. I think that would probably be the only other item I think is easy going. The block is a little stiff to have next to your hip. So if anything, you add a little height next to your left thigh, or maybe a blanket wadded up or a towel would work too. But the ball is nice because it's a responsive surface, right? You squish it. So I have the ball at that upper outer left leg. I have mine a little closer to my hip. I'm just gonna feel how that works. And then lean your body weight into that ball. The left leg kind of squishes the ball, and the left hand reaches for the right knee, and kind of sort out the ability to kind of melt some of that holding power in your right hip. So feel when you hold onto the knee, and you feel that leg cross over, and the body sending, for me, I notice my neck needs a little more support. This is not enough right now. So I'm going to see if I can let the heavier part of my skull rest back, have a natural arch in the neck, but if that still causes pressure, you can wad up the blanket under your head even more. You just do it. That's fine. You don't have to suffer. The hip is feeling enough awareness there. So I still hold on to the right knee with the left hand. And I'm trying to keep as much of my spine as possible resting back. I'm trying to isolate the hip. Now there's other ways you can explore this, right? We've done this before where you put a belt under your foot, and then you hold the belt with the left hand and just kind of feel it reach. It's a little more extreme variation. You could try those things. I kind of came back to this one, even though I've added that in before. Just the basic classic. And then as you come back to center, release the hand. And as you uncross, you might even play with, let that right knee kind of position itself, same spatial balance on the left knee, but feel the knee kind of move away from you and see if you can actually feel the right buttock a little more that way. It's kind of interesting, engaging the glutes. And then uncross the right foot, left foot comes up to right knee, ankle kind of hooks on, ball to the upper outer right leg. And one side you might be higher on the hip with the ball, and you might have some habits. So, just notice, maybe there's some habits that you start to go, oh, that's kind of interesting in my yoga practice. And maybe having a design class of sequencing is helpful for us. Try to program balancing. So I'm letting my body weight tilt, and I'm actually trying to get my spine, the sides of the back of the waist to kind of continue to release down. Hold the left knee with the right hand, releasing back into the support of the props. Yeah, it's just simply an ankle crossing. It's not a lot of anatomy that holds you on there. So when you grab onto that knee, if you've got props on the right side, like a block seems to be holding you up too, you might notice that and just kind of kindly shift it away. We don't want too much support. If it holds you and you like it, just use it. No big deal. I keep moving mine away, and then somehow I find it again. My leg moves farther, and there's the block again. Okay, if you grab that knee, you're feeling that you're pulling it. So you're trying to guide it to the right, not just towards you. We're pretty used to pulling our knee and moving it towards ourselves with this hook of the foot. You try to guide it across. Relax the heart. Rest your brain. Include your breath. You relax the grip. Again, I want it to repeat that we have the option of come back to the center, let the left knee position so it tries to push away from you on its own, not using a block to push it or your hands, but see if there is its own kind of, you want the flesh around the muscles, right, to also, you know, be engaged here. Although you kind of think of what's around the bone as muscle, but it's got lots of names. Connective tissue. Okay, now as I release, we're going to go a little backwards on the second sage series. So you already got your prop set up for sleeping, and I just mentioned focusing on the pace of the heart. So as you uncross, let's just move the ball aside. Let's use it under your left knee. And then as you roll to your right, again, it's kind of delicate motions. The turn. And this is the perfect time to just kind of feel how your body moves in space with the head, the shoulders. And then you shift up, and now you just simply hug your bolster. Okay, so turn the waist. And as you lower down, your head turns left. You can hug into the bolster. You can have your hands underneath the blanket that's probably kind of just flapping from the sides of the bolster. And relax the heart. It's probably a little more calm on the second side. You're getting there. So simply be here, let the weight of your head relax, and just feel how the spine has a rotation that's fairly gentle in the thoracic. So thinking about the twists, like, steering wheel, you're using the rotation, using the waistline, the ribs as a steering wheel to move you into the twist. Yeah, I like that analogy. So self-study on just how the circulation moves through. Rib cage is that steering wheel. And you settle and you kind of park it. Let's take a few more slow, deep phases of in and out breath. Now side sage. Okay, so come up, turn the bolster, and when you're already with that rotation, it's warmed up right into the center piece of the body. And we kind of think of our daily habit, there's a lot of warm up and movement in our legs. So we're trying to work on respiratory system, lymphatic drainage, so we're really in the core container. So when you're leaning into the side, I like something on the inside of the left leg. And if you don't have a ball, a block works just fine for this one. So I can swap this out for a block, no problem, and have it on the inside. Just have to kind of be a little clever about the spacing of it on the leg. And then I prefer a block overhead, sand, or some weight on my side. It could be my hip, it could be my waist. But as you lower down, you get to decide the height of your blanket. Yeah, you get to decide many, many things in home practice, but some of these shapes, the outline is clear that the knee is bending towards the bolster. When you have that spatial reach with the left arm, if it's up, I don't feel like if my arm is this direction, it's a different influence on my waist. So not a lot. So you could have your hand like a bolster. You could flow it open, could be on the side. The influence on the waist is the breath. You decide the arm. And then as you linger in words with the in and out breath, experience the ribs with that motion. If your leg gets a little jarred, you feel too much pulling in the left leg, simply slide the left knee to the right knee in more of a fetal position. This sometimes feels necessary. It's more important that we have this waist workout here versus the leg workout. So don't worry if you change the lower beam with the below the hip if you decide to make it comfy. Now release the movement of the arm, whether it's moving open or down. Slide the sand away, and then let's turn the waist over down to the bolster, and then come up. And let's make the blankets so they're stacked up behind. I think you can just leave them just like that. You don't have to pull them in, but get your block from behind you, and then take a seat on top of the bolster. Yeah, and let's do a little bit of seated cat-cow. So what we'll do is, let me think this through a tiny bit, cross-legged with right leg forward, okay? No sand, let's just simplify. So I hold on to my knees, or I hold on somewhere between my hip and my knee, wherever my hand can kind of land. The knee is nice because it's it's kind of it's a pointed object. You can grip the boundary of the knees, and then that gives you something to kind of hang from. Okay, the thigh is kind of like expansive, but I want you to clutch onto the legs, however you want to position your hands, and then the right leg is forward to left, cross-legged. You can see Sukhasana. And I'm kind of a little bit off my bolster. I'm not completely perfect with that, but I know if I lift the chest up, inhale, so I'm pulling a bit with my hands, and then I move my spine into flexion. Feels like a real rounding in my back, chin towards the ground, not necessarily to the chest, but down. Pull on the knees to get your spine to come back up, lifting the chest, alternating flexing and rounding. And as you extend, actually not flexing, flexing and extending, not flexing and rounding. Good to change it up so you get confused. So last time you come up with this arch, kind of notice, oh, got the lift, trying for it. And then I'll take the right leg, so I'm going to reach it out. Let's move our right foot out, left foot towards the bolster. So it's kind of in this jagged position. It's not like your foot is forward, it's to the bolster, and then get a sandbag, maybe a ball under the left leg or a block if that feels like it would be helpful, or a blanket. Anything under the left knee might be nice to get some buoyancy. And then take a rotation to the left side. So you're going to turn, so you feel like turning is easing the ribs, kind of steering, but it creates a kind of a juicing here internally, internal juicer. Okay, so right heel reaches, you're pressing through the right foot, even if it's out to that side. And when you rotate to the left, you might like closing your eyes so that you can sense the motion of the heart up the rotation of the ribs around. Okay, and then let the position of balance focus on lifting the chest. Like you're sitting proud. Okay, like proud twist. Lifting the chest. Okay, so the spine might be kind of tailored into the chest movement. So when you rotate back, it's a mild rotation, I know. I want you to take that right leg, and if you've got something under the left knee, take it away unless you need it. Like if you need that support for the knee and you're taking the twist with your foot on a block, I'll show that variation. But if you're okay without the ball, what you'll do is you'll let the left knee lower down. You'll cross the right leg over the left leg and then take the full twist with the arm pressing the right leg. So it's really juicing up the organs here, right? It's a juicer pose. Now, if that is just too much on the knee, you have your ball under the left knee and your foot is on a block. Now the foot could be sickle, so the side of the foot would be on the block and turn to the right. You can also have the bottom of the foot on the block if that's too much position on your knee, to rotate it out and use the elbow to hook onto the leg. This would be the most basic version, right? And then you have this nice line into your spine, lifting. Yeah, I like that one. So a little self-study here. Breathe. You relax the grip with that arm, however you're pushing with that arm to the right leg. Turn back where you start, right? Right foot in front of the left shin on the ground. Take the sand to the right thigh. Okay, so what you'll do is you'll lean forward like you're going into a hip stretch. It seems kind of funny to call this a hip opener because you're putting weight into the hip to open it. But when you bring your blocks to lift them as high as they'll go, you'll lean forwards. Yeah, I'm just kind of just tipping a little front. I'm not trying to go very far, but I am going to try to move my blocks a little farther and see how that works in my back. I think it's funny because no matter what you try to do with moving your props farther to go further, it's like you compensate in your shoulder joint versus your waist. So I want you to try to get the waist to move, the stomach, the posterior core muscles to stretch. So if that kind of tightens when you go forward and you're using like these joints instead, then there's work to do, right? Maybe you go back again and breathe. You go, okay, I'm gonna go back forward and see if my waist will go with me. So just take it slow, observe. It's hard not to criticize ourselves with it, but do the best that you can. Okay, so get the feel here. When we switch the crossing of the leg, I want you to move your hands onto your legs and then just swap the left foot forward up the right. And if you kind of like that cat-cow pattern, that rounding, that lifting, take that again for a few moments. Just the hands hooked onto the knees. You can keep your sand where it's at, no big deal. But just notice there's different ways to kind of motion through the spine. Some of us will really curl it. Some will stay a little taller. But just keep that awareness. And then your sand could be on that right thigh. And then find a still point where you're centered on up, your ball, or your block could be under your right knee. And then just get a feel here for awareness and rotation. Okay, so we're going to stretch the left leg out. We're going to turn to the right, bring the left hand to the right knee, and rotate. And if you get a little confused and dizzy at direction, you're dizzy with directions. Just let the left leg stretch out, the right knee bend. Yeah, I have to second my thoughts on a lot of these things from time to time, but It's good to have a practice to work with that. So body, mind, I've got my waist turning. I know that some of my habits might be to tilt, lean, overuse joints. So consider your belly moving with the breath. And then you might find rotation. Try to keep the left foot active, pushing through the heel. Okay, so the spine, right, is in the ribs or that steering wheel for the spine. But it's really the rib space that's rotating to strengthen the spine. So when you relax the grip on the knee, right, you have this option of coming back center, take the ball out, left leg crosses over right leg, and then taking the twist right to the left side. It's a little bit more active going that direction. If you want to take the left foot on the block in front, that's fine. Could be the knee is up, could be the foot is rotated on its side, and then turn. But I would keep the sand just where it's at with that right thigh because it's kind of the root. Yeah, so it's just a real nice flushing through the spine. Flush, flush. So if your spine is, you can kind of feel where the rotation is, it should just be in the center, you're not going to be rotating your lumbar, but it is where the lumbar or the thoracic and lumbar, where they kind of meet, is where most of us have the best twist. So you want to lift up out of that space at the base. And then relax your grip with your right hand and turn, and we'll go forward fold. So what we'll do is we'll take our foot off of the block if it was on there for anyone, and then move your sand to your left thigh, and get a feel of upright versus uptight. Feel upright pattern, spine, crown up. And then leaning forward. We have like a soundtrack today for a class with the rain. I don't know, Susan, if you can hear it, but pretty busy outside. So feel where the position of the hip is more active. Is it on the left hip? Could be discussed as either one. But if you find some kind of complacency with blocks, that's okay. It's fine to feel, okay, I reach out of my back. It's like maybe 25% of your reach, that's fine. Remember, we're restoring our bodies. Okay, so getting prepared here for some deeper core and hip flexor work. So when you are hands on the blocks or maybe on the ground, some people like to go lower in this forward bend. We're going to go far prone. So that's farthest forward we can go here. So what we'll do is we'll take the blocks, we'll actually shift back up and then move your blocks all the way over. See how we'll plot this out. Our sand goes to the side, and then you might as well keep your blankies. Both of them would be nice. And then when your left leg or any leg goes back, I want you to take a position where you slide the right leg back as well. So you have both knees on the blankies. And then you turn your bolster forward so it's straight in front of you. I'm going to do a little bit of a shift of my blankets a little farther up. Take some of the fringe off of them. That's one way to do it. Don't want to get too close to my wall. Okay, so now as I lower down, I'm going to be belly down and elbows down. Actually, keep going with it. I'm too close, I think. Okay, go forward, go down onto the bolster. And, feel where you bring your elbows down below your shoulders. So you get a feeling of the pressure of the forearms. the arch through the spine. And then if you can monitor this back area, you don't have to lift your hands right now, but this back zone, you're trying to get the breath into that kind of dormant space in the back. So with the elbows down, and maybe I put them a little bit farther out, expanding at the ribs. Now you certainly could do this with your head on a sandbag, right? If you decide to block a sandbag, if that just feels more comfortable for you. Now the legs need to be relaxed. So I'm going to separate my feet a bit more. Tops of the feet rest on the ground. Slide the hands back so they're in line with the bolster. It's a pretty good lineup for the hands. And then as my elbows are they fling out a little to the side, so they get a little bit of flying power. And then I lift up the back of my head, press into my palms, and come up just the right amount for me. So this is, I'm going to keep my elbows bent and just be okay with that. Because how does it feel in your back, right? So if you push all the way to long arms, might just feel too much back strength, right? So you want to feel what is the right amount for you in this version of lengthening in the front, right? Upward dog version. Okay, so now toes under, lower forward so that you have safety in your back. Slide your hands back a little further, back from the line of the edge of the bolster. Push, and then knees push down to bring you back. And then I want you to turn the bolster towards, doesn't have to touch the wall actually. It's only in arm's reach. So if you can't reach it to the wall, then you can't reach it. But stretch your hands onto that bolster and the head down between the arms. So feel where there's a full reach out of your back. Yeah, that could be a little too much for some of us. You might have to have your hands on the floor. Okay. Now, when you come back up through center, what we're going to do is we're going to switch the sides on the mat. So we'll work to move our feet towards the wall. So I want you to slide forward. If your blankets are there under your knees, turn. Some of you are going to reorient your mat against the wall, I know. And you'll turn your bolster off of your mat. And then you'll pivot. So you've got a blanket under your knees, just one. Okay, move it back enough so it's under your knees. Your other blanket can go off to the side. They're still there, good. Okay, I have my hands so that there's some blocks nearby. I want to keep these in easy reach. I'll put it like that so you can see the movement of the arms. Now with the hands spreading, the fingers, then the spine moves into flexion, chin towards chest. Feet touching the wall. Inhale, arch the spine, cat-cow from all fours. And then as you exhale, hollow through the core, chin to chest. Inhale, arch through the spine. And now feel that this is like you're trying to create motion of your spine, the spinal column. Okay, so when you feel your spine moving in both of these directions, it's the stomach band, right, that's doing the developing work that has more development to do, more to come, I think, what I find in my core band, especially lower abdomen. So when you come back to neutral, let's try lifting the knees and stretching our heels down. So they could be down and a little bit up at the wall. So maybe take that instruction, go backwards a bit here. So my heels could be a little bit up at the baseboard. I like to have them low as I can go, my heels down to kind of feel the difference around the calves. But if it's a struggle, right, the struggle's real on this one, you might find heels a little bit up is just a lot better. Just it feels more complete. So make that decision here with the work with the legs. Now the legs are kind of feeling a little easier than the arms. They have a whole resistance game going through them. So now just let the feet get a little closer towards each other and step the right foot between the hands and take a block under each one. Now, I would just go block up. So it's second setting or it's the top. It could be either one. And with the back knee up, you choose. Let's have personal choice on this one. So your knee could be up or your knee could be down. I personally like to have my knee down so I can get a little stretch in my quad, but if you're one that hurts your knee, not a good idea. So I would just go with a position where you do notice your right knee kind of doing a little bit of flare motion. It's quite forward. It's not over the toes. Okay, but if I have my back knee up, I might work with my heel at just a little bit up at the wall. But you kind of have to play with how high your heel is so that you can get the front of that left thigh to open up. And if the knee is down, that's pretty easy to get that to loosen, even if you still feel a deep stretch. Okay. Now step the left foot forward and take it so your arms stretch up. You'll see part of me now, but you'll push down to your feet and you'll lift up, standing with the feet apart, of course. They don't like to stand on each other anyway, but press into your heels. Feel the lift up out of the waist. Now you might lean side to side just to let the waistband find some momentum with the lift of the arms. You might bring your head space to look straight forward and then let the arms kind of swing themselves back. Hands to the hips. Feel what part of the hips you like to get a grip on with your hands equally. And then bend your knees and lean forward. And then as you catch this forward bend, you decide whether you hold the back of the legs, whether you put your blocks in front of you and you take your forward bend this way, or you let your arms release and hold your elbows. So there's 4 options. You'll find one. But with that experience of the balance of the bones into the feet, there's a lot of bone structure that is moving into your feet right now. So see if you can orient the spacing of the feet that's complementary for your experience. The release of the head's weight. You let that stretch the spine. Okay, now release the arms, bend through the legs. If you already have your blocks under your hands, you just slide them back besides your feet. And then as you orient that lift of the hips, we're going to keep them still high. So as the right leg stretches back, turn to your right, bring both blocks with you. Take your feet so the right side touches the wall, the right foot. And you might have to kind of gather your wits around your hips here and move everything a little flush to the right. Okay, shift right. And then as you lower down, you'll take a wide dog pose. And so the hands stretch forward, the chest reaches down, your head is between the arms. Yeah, if you want to have your hands on your blocks, use them. Yeah, this feels good. If you can navigate the expansiveness of the spine. Yeah, the movement of the hips back. Good. Yeah, feeling where there's a stance of movement. Obviously the legs, but the arms kind of shoot out of the back. The shoulder pieces. Hopefully your shoulder's not in pieces now. You now transition your weight in your feet a little forwards, and then walk your hands back so you do feel like you're trying to balance on all the limbs. Right? And then as you take your blocks and turn back to that left front leg in this orientation from your wall, and then just pivot. Be careful on that back knee, right? Because it gets a little bit of that external rotation. So lift the right heel up at the wall, and then get a feel of movement of that left knee forwards, the hands onto those blocks. Support that reach out of that left knee. Now, some of you decided to have your knee on the ground for that whole lunge, so this might be your choice on this side as well. You kind of tailor it for the moment, you know, get a feel how your response is into your hip. You know, one of them is elongating the hip flexor, the psoas, and one is strengthening. So you've got two sides with two different, you know, consciousnesses right now with the movement in the psoas. Kind of funny. Just to mix it up. It's a pose mixer. Okay, now if your knee is up, I want you to lower it down so you kind of join the shape shifting here. And then as you shift back, you could come back to either child's pose or heart opener. So that would be, I would reach down with the arms and stretch the chest straight down, but keep both arms reaching forwards. Child's pose would be knees are wide, toes together, and then forehead down. So make a choice for about 30 seconds or so with the position. Yeah, make sure that the knees are in alignment with that option. You know, working with both sides of the spine into the pelvis, into the legs. So come up to table. You may not even need to go all the way to table, but you're going to roll, we'll shift down to your hip and then take the blanket. Let's have our one blanket here so it's a little bit, little less puffy. So if you had a quarter full like this, you're going to flatten it down. You got a big square behind you. And then you got your blocks. And I think I finally figured out this variation for my spine's care. I've kind of gone all over it, but what feels good for my spine. So I imagine you're going to still be trying to figure that out as life goes along for bridge poses. So what we're going to do is we're going to work with the dual leg awareness. So you have your bolster at the base of your wall, flat, of course. It's the flat bolster. If you're not sure what one you want to use here. Okay. So I know we've done this where we have our feet at the wall, and it was kind of a big deal. I like doing that with the wall. So I'm kind of studying how my spine and my pelvis and my hips feel. I want them to feel like they're loosening up from doing the work, not getting tighter. So have your feet at the wall. You're at a right angle. Now, some of us are going to be a little farther back with our pelvis. Some are going to get a little closer. So what you might do is make sure that you can feel the back of your pelvis and your lower back. It feels kind of flat. So if I push too far back with my feet, then I have a little more arch. Okay. If you feel you're too close to the wall, you're not sure, your knees will hurt, right? If you have too much of a pull, like your knees are too far forward, you'll know that. So just be aware. Simplicity is best. Just keep the feet up at the wall, put a ball between the knees. That's about is where we're going. Now, once the ball is there, your idea of focus is to squeeze into the ball. And I want you to notice, even if your hands are about your abdomen, lower belly, when you squeeze in, if there's any awareness there, if it's like kind of dormant with your abdomen, could be doing nothing. So as you squeeze in, see if you can walk your feet, move your feet, scoot them a little closer in. They're closer together, but really squeeze. Okay. Now arms go out to cactus, so that means elbows out, hands back. And if you push into the wall, so you add another element of effort, right? You're pushing, you're squeezing. It's a whole beam of effort in my legs now. Okay, breathe. Don't expect to have to get your hips to lift right now. Just hold so the pelvic floor is woke. Okay. All right, now keep the squeeze, keep the pressure, and then belly motions with the breath. Inhale. So the abdomen does puff up, the diaphragm moves down, the abdomen lifts. And then exhale, relax back towards the spine. So far the equipment is working somewhat, huh? Yeah, take a few more of those. And there's effort, and you may have plugged into the amount of effort you're going to emit into your concentration of your legs already. That was like, this is it, it's my full effort. Okay. Relax the focus on the breath. Just, of course, you keep breathing. Relax the grip of the knees. Bring your knees in towards your chest. And actually, let's do this. If you have a ball, keep a ball. If you don't have a ball, put a block between the knees at its most narrow. Right? So you use a block very narrow. And lower the feet to the bolster. And the bolster is pushed up against the wall, so you won't have any challenge with losing it. But push down and then lift your hips up and stretch your arms back overhead. I know you still have a blanket underneath your head. And then lower the spine down. Of course, your arms go at the end. Breathe in, belly full. Exhale, hips lift up, arms go back. Inhale when you're still with your arms back. Exhale, let the spine lower down. Okay. Now as you bring your knees towards your chest, you're going to remove the ball. The focus is all block here. So I want you to place your feet at the bolster, of course. This is going to be a full supported bridge. So I like to use all the goods I can on this so it's comfy. I'm going to use 2 blocks, and they're going to be side to side on the mid height. You can go low height, side to side under your pelvis, or mid. Okay, so you're going to lift your hips up, but here's the challenge on this one. There is a little challenge, is that you want your feet to push into the wall. So I don't want to get too far back, and I don't want to get too squished up. But the buttocks kind of relax over the blocks. It's kind of comfortable for the flesh of the rear. It kind of relaxes over. And you can get a feel of the 2 pillars out of your pelvis, your legs. You want to feel kind of that dual leg support pushing into the wall. Now, if you need to move the blocks lower, that's fine. You want to go to 1 block turned, you can do that too. In fact, if you decide these 2 blocks, it just feels you're not sure if this is what you signed up for, you didn't have to sign up. You could try the 1 block. I have to go a little closer to the wall to do that. And that's kind of nice too. Yeah, it's a different strength in my back. Arms are down by the sides, whichever you've chosen for your supportive bridge. Palms open. And then be for a few moments with the field of pressing into the wall. And you might have to keep adjusting to get that just right. And then feel what parts of the legs rest into the bolster. Yeah, that's kind of a little bit of a polarity, right? You're pushing and then you're trying to rest a part of the leg. Shoulders back and down. Chest is open. You now feel where the knees bend, the feet center onto the bolster. Press down into your feet and then scoop at the back. So I know that the position of pushing off of the into the feet and lifting the hips tends to be a solid lift, like of the leg, the hip lifts up like a post. So I want you to come into the awareness of the spine, the curlicue of that back, and then lift up the hips, and then slide the block away, or the blocks, they can go away for the rest, right? So they don't need to be in your focus at all. And then as the spine slides down, yeah, feel the roundness into that back, then stretch the spine fully. And then use your feet to push your bolster to the right side of your mat. And let the right leg relax and cross the left leg over to that bolster. You don't have to make the right leg straight for this version today. So the ball, if you have one, goes to the sacrum area. If it doesn't seem to do much for you, it does have a nice rebound for that flesh, but it's pretty minimal. So if you don't use it, it's fine. But the sand on the exterior leg is helpful at times. If you decide you'd rather have your sand at your arm, and that's a nice cross-sectional pulley for the flesh, take the sand higher to the arm or to the hip or down towards the knee. If this is a little irritating on your knee, you end up wanting to have the sand closer to it, not farther away, because that would pull the tissues around the knee. So you would want the sand to be closer to the knee to support it. Yeah, it could be a really small knee bend. It doesn't have to be as pointed as possible. You know, let the flesh kind of indulge in the circulation here. And just let your mind focus on feeling how the shape influences the circulation. And let your head roll to the left and relax into your breath. And you let the bottom, the right hip, the base of the body really be heavy, so the upper body can rest into it. Breathing slow. A few more breaths here on this side. Now as your sand is moved away, you bring the legs back into the center line and take the crossing to the other side. I would go pretty quickly with that so that you don't disrupt the SI area, so it gets a balance from one side to the next. Isn't, you know, mystery moments of where are we going? Why am I not balanced? So I try to keep that lower beam from my belly button down in more of this rotation to the left side now. So the right leg crosses to the bolster on the left side of your mat. And if you kind of swing the hip bones under you, the ball, right, it could go around to the sacrum area or the gluteal fold, right at the buttocks. That's also a good landing. And the ball just usually sticks there. And sand added to the leg. Yeah, the spinal couple poses, I want to let them be slow. Right, we'll balance this one out and then we'll do a finale of legs up the wall. So that'll be nice to flush out the legs and the hips and rest the heart. So get a feel if your head does need some more blanket. This might be too low. You might be, oh, that's okay, but I feel like I'm tightening in my neck. This might be one pose where you need to make your blanket a little bit higher. I don't know, I think sometimes it's good to have that lower height, just kind of see what happens with my neck. But if you do feel you're efforting a lot, then you need to change it up. And just let the weight of your head roll to the right. You know, feeling where the right arm is open and the left arm may have a little bit of a different tilt to it, right? Because you're trying to flush out through that right armpit chest. So when we do come to the wall in a moment, I want you to try to keep both those areas evenly spanning. Give a few more breaths here to that right hip. Slide the sand away. Roll to the left. Push. And then come up and move your bolster right up to the wall. So it's right against the edge. You can kind of go right into this easily. You want to slide your blanket in, and you move your seat to the wall. This is the best thing about home practice. You can use the wall. It's the best. You get the whole deal. And when you swing your legs up, flushing out, if the flush is a little tricky, you can always be a little distant from the wall. That's fine. You know, you do what you find relative to your condition. You know, so some people might end up doing legs up with the legs up on a chair or a bed or, you know, a couch. That might feel more cozy some days than others. And so when you add your sand to your feet, if you've got a weight of something, sand or a bag of rice, that works okay too. You just have to have enough rice, and then just put a pillowcase around it. So if that lift is through the heels, like go find something in the bulk section that looks like it's heavy. That's going to be your new sandbag, huh? So feel where the heels are lifting and the toes moving down towards you, right? So you want to have a flexion of the legs. And then span the arms out or down by the sides of the bolster. This sometimes feels nice, is to have my arms so they're below the level of the heart, because you want the arms to be heart or lower to relax the heart and lower the blood pressure. Slow down the heart rate. You want the arms below the height of the heart. So as the spine eases into this arch, you might not even really notice the definition in the spine. Resting the eyes back. And feeling a slow pace of breath. Swallow just to clear the passageway of your throat. Okay, now when you feel the manner of reach through the legs, soften it a bit. Let the knees bend, slide the feet down, and then as the legs shift away from the wall, just a small amount because you'll bend the knees and they're going to change anyhow. And if I would encourage you to let the sand shift away, bring the legs back up and relax them. So there may be a little hinge at the knees. I kind of visualize they're like full of helium, right? So they just lift up. Heli feet, helium feet. And the hips might be able to shift a little bit like you're kind of wagging your tail, but then find that still point. And then bend the knees even further and slide the feet, shift them off the wall, and then roll to the side and help yourself to come up. And it might be a bit of a pressure just to get to sitting for your arm beams, but take back that seat onto the bolster where you have a wall behind you and the lift out of the kind of the mid ribs up into the neck, and then from that neck space and the brain centers. Okay, maybe it feels good to have your head back to the wall, maybe a little forward, but let's arrive where the hands meet in front of the heart, and we inhale, sliding that breath in and exhale, bowing into your heart.